guys, welcome back. This is episode 111, which is beautiful and kind of interesting because today's guest, Johnny Persón, he is the owner and founder of Og11 Company, and so we got 11s all over the place today.
Yeah.
Dude, thanks so much for coming out here, flying out here. This is your first time to Utah, right?
First time to Utah. Yeah. Excited to be here.
What are your first thoughts on the place?
It's cold.
Yeah.
It's really chilly.
You're coming from Atlanta.
Coming from Atlanta. And not originally from Atlanta, but flew in from Atlanta.
You were raised in Southern California.
Southern California, Newport Beach.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Been in Atlanta about 4 years now.
Yeah, to be fair, is not the best time for you to come here.
To be fair, it's cold in Atlanta right now too.
Yeah.
But like my run this morning, my fingers, I thought I lost them. I was in the shower. I was like,
right. Yeah.
And
you've got a porous shirt on, so that's
I had a hoodie on before this, so I didn't come completely unprepared. Yeah.
Well, sweet man, I've been looking forward to this. We connected a few months ago, and you sent me some of your hats, and I've just been loving them, wearing them every day.
Yeah.
And then we got on a call and talked a little bit more about your story, and I wanted to hear way more.
Yeah.
And so, let's start a little bit from the beginning. Why you started this company, what it means, Og11, and kind of your vision with it.
Yeah. Before we get into that, I just want to say the reason I reached out initially, I had been getting your clips on TikTok, and then it filtered into my Instagram algorithm for months and months and months. And I always found myself, the amount of your clips that I have saved under my inspiration folder or my God folder or breakups or whatever it is, is insane.
Yeah.
So one day I finally was just like, I'm just going to reach out to this dude and see if he wants some hats.
Yeah.
Because I just love his content. I would love to see my hats on the podcast.
Right.
And then we connected, and it's just been good ever since.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Do you remember what the first video was that you saw that you were like, oh, this, I really resonate with?
I couldn't tell you exactly which one it was. No.
Yeah.
But I know that it was something revolving breakups.
Yeah. Have you, and we'll circle back to this, but have you been in a breakup very recently?
How deep do we want to go? Not super recently. At the beginning of the year, I went through one that was a bit, it was more devastating to me than I thought it was. And I think I kind of avoided it for a few months.
Yeah.
And then I ran into the person, and it kind of shook me up a lot more than I thought, even in the moment.
Yeah.
It took me a couple months after the fact to realize that.
Yeah.
And, as I've gotten older and older, like I've gotten better and better at the grieving process, but still to this day, it's like, sometimes it's harder than I think.
Yeah.
It's it's just hard sometimes. I'm like, why is it still this hard?
Yeah. The weird thing is you feel almost like foolish or like embarrassed because you're like, dude, I shouldn't be getting completely rocked just because I ran into my ex.
Yeah. I'm 34. Why do I feel this way? I should be past this,
No, but you're you're still a human, you know?
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's weird. I remember this happened like a few weeks ago, but my last breakup was like a year and a half ago, but it was pretty violent. and I had finished a podcast and wrapped up and went out to my car, and I looked at my phone and I had 2 missed calls from my ex. And I'm like
freaking out.
Like I start going to a bad place quick.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, to be fair, how long had you guys gone no contact before that? Or how long did it happen to be you didn't talk to each other?
It had probably been 6-8 months. Like,
oh my goodness, 2 random calls.
Yeah, like 2 missed calls.
You think you're way past it, and then you're like, what is happening?
Yeah. Like my brain goes to 100 horrible places. Yeah. And when I say horrible, I mean more like, does she want to get back together? Does she miss me? Is she thinking about me? Like, she wouldn't have called unless blah, 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 blah. And it turned out like she wanted to ask me about like some restaurant we had gone to, and she couldn't remember what it was. And I'm like,
which also to an extent, you're like, did you really want to call me? You could have Googled it. You could have figured it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I know her phone plan. She has a Google.
Go on TikTok and look, find it somewhere else.
But I'm like, and I felt silly that kind of bugged me for however long it did.
Yeah.
But
it's an interesting thing. I think this is something that I've been trying to get a lot better at. A therapist years ago told me, don't shit on yourself, which I've always thought was funny.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know why. It's just kind of a cheeky statement
Right.
coming from a therapist, but there's so much of that I should feel different, or I shouldn't feel this way, or I shouldn't be sad, or I should be more beyond this than I am. And it's like, I feel like I've been learning a lot more to give myself grace, and I feel like that's the ultimate balance of, I don't know, life, and like every aspect of it is like learning to give yourself grace in every journey, in every aspect. But specifically for me, I need to learn to be better about it, specifically in intimate relationships.
Yeah. Why do you feel like sometimes your first tendency is to not give yourself grace, like to be hard on yourself?
I think it's a double-edged sword, right? There's this like go-getter perfectionism, probably largely induced by like popular culture. This idea of like hustle mentality, hustle culture, work 16 hours a day, sleep 4 hours a night, you know? It's funny. I was actually just listening to the Brian Johnson and Derek from More Plates, More Dates podcast. Brian Johnson's the dude that's like spending $2 million a year on his health and trying to age backwards. Right? And Brian Johnson is like, I want to make the new culture. Hey, I get 8 hours of sleep a night. I eat really healthy. I work out 6 days a week. And I also have a successful company, which is like a level I'm trying to get to, you know, having that healthy balance while still being productive.
Yeah.
But it's this thing inside of me that's just like, I always need to be going and doing something for me to an extent kind of feel validated, I guess. Some of it internal validation, knowing that like I'm doing everything that I can to achieve the life that I want to achieve.
Yeah.
But also to an extent to be validated by others.
Right.
Which I don't like the fact that I need to be validated by others. Something I'm working on diligently every week with my therapist.
Right.
But it is still something I fall victim to and I'm trying to work on, and it helps me work really hard and get a lot of things done. Like the first year of the company, we've had massive success. I've been able to cross off all the goals off of my list, even the ones that I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
We crossed them off because I'm kind of psychotic like that.
Right.
But on the flip side of it, like in those periods of downtime, it's can easily lead to depression and anxiety if not looked out for. So
right, because you don't want your self-worth wrapped up in just your achievements.
Yeah.
And what your, you know, one specific part of your life, even if it's consuming most of your hours. Yeah. It's like, that's not who you are. That's just what you're doing. Yeah. You know, but
it's easier said than done.
Yeah. I always struggled with that. Like, even when I was young, just with sports, like that's just what I grew up doing and all I cared about for a while. Yeah. So like when I underperformed, I was like so depressed and upset because that's where all my self-worth was. Yeah. You know,
do you have any, I have an individual moment that I always think back to. Do you have any moments like that when you were younger in sports that you think back to and you're like, this screwed me up? Or like I can pinpoint to this moment when I felt like I am not valuable.
I had a tough time with my relationship with basketball. Okay. Because
makes sense. You're tall. I'm glad to hear that you used that to play basketball.
Yeah. But when I was a freshman in high school, I was 5'0". Okay. So I was a good guard, and I was a scrawny little muskrat of a player, but
scrawny little muskrat. Okay.
but you know, it was always my dream to, you know, freaking play in the NBA and to play college basketball. And obviously when you get a little bit older, you're like, okay, NBA is like maybe a stretch, but like I think I can play college ball, and then maybe, who knows, maybe I can, you know. But I just was such a late bloomer, and so like I was a good player, but I just didn't get as much playing time as I thought I deserved. Yeah. And my coach, I felt like we were at odds, and so anytime like I didn't get the minutes I thought I deserved, or I wasn't starting or whatever, it just felt like the world was crashing down on me, because it felt like
you took it personally.
I took it personally, but I also felt like, well, this is one step further away from my dream now.
Yeah.
And I don't have any sort of plan B. I don't have like,
yeah.
you know, I'm 15. I'm like, all I like is basketball and girls. Yeah. And I don't know where.
And girls aren't going to pay me. So basketball better work out. Coach, put me in.
I don't know what my career with girls is going to be. But I'll tell you what, I ended up having, I can't pinpoint one specific instance, but I had this moment with my dad where, it was like after my last game as a senior and we lost. And so I'm upset about that, but also I'm kind of like, yeah, like I may be good enough to go walk on somewhere, but like I don't have any offers. Like this is maybe the end of the road for me. And I just like started crying with my dad and he started crying with me.
Yeah.
And he was just like, he's like, yeah, dude, this sucks. It sucks. But he's like, he just reminded me that like my performance in basketball had nothing to do with how much he loved me, and it never had, and it never would be. And it's funny, I of course knew that, but to hear him say it out loud meant so much, because I don't know, when you're that young, you just don't even think that deeply about stuff, even though you think you're pretty deep.
And then your parents tell you something, and you're like, oh my God, I didn't even know I needed to hear that. I didn't know I had these feelings.
Yeah. And so, it was a cool moment to be like a little lesson in what unconditional love was, you know?
Yeah.
But, okay, let's rewind. Tell me how this company came to be.
Okay. We'll do a hard 180. Turn. Oh, how far back do I want to go with this? So my sister and I are 13 years apart. She was born on August 11th, 2003. When I was 13, kind of a moment that I think shook me up a little bit growing up as an only child was like, I don't know, I never really thought about it until I had a sibling, and I was like, wait a second, where's all my attention, right? At the age of 20 years old, this was kind of at the end of a horrific run of drugs and alcohol. I had been to jail. I'd gone into an indigent detox because I was getting kicked out of my home because I was stealing money from my mom. She didn't want anything to do with me. She's like, you need to go to a detox and get better. I went to an indigent detox, got out, hung out with these guys, ended up going to jail, which is something that I had said I never wanted to do.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
I grew up with a stepfather who was in and out of jail. And I was like, I'm never going to be that guy. End up in jail, and I'm like, whoa, what's happening? Like, this isn't good. A month later, I end up back in jail. I end up back in jail because I had been up for 2 days. I went back to my home after my mom kicked me out. I was trying to pry the window open, and the window cracked. Again, I had been up for 2 days at this point. I took the pieces of glass and like set them down on the side, because when I left, I was going to put the window back together.
Yeah.
And pretend that nobody was there.
With magic glass.
I have no clue what I was thinking. My mom pulls up. She finds out that I had taken all the rest of her money out of her safe, which was her client's money. It wasn't even her money. She ends up calling the cops on me, which was probably the best thing that could have ever happened to me. I didn't get arrested that day. Probably a week later, a friend of mine had overdosed. I tried to go back to the house. I called my mom to get some clothes for the wake. I said, Mom, can I get some clothes for the wake? The cops happened to be there, investigators looking into the whole thing, got on the phone with them. They said, why don't you come by the house and talk to us? I talked to them. I say, I'll come by if you aren't going to arrest me. The guy says, I won't arrest you. Don't worry about it. You probably know what happens next. So I go to the house, pull up. I confess to everything, because the guy said he wasn't going to arrest me, right? So I'm like, I might as well just let it all out. I'm going to get out of here, go to the wake, and have fun. I get there, I confess to everything. His partner says, all right, put your hands behind your back. And I'm like, well, you said you weren't going to arrest me. The guy's looking at me, says, I said I wasn't going to arrest you. I didn't say my partner wasn't going to arrest you.
It's dirty.
Oh, man. And it's a funny story. Like when I go back to rehabs and tell my story, like that always gets a laugh. And it's kind of funny, but it's also like that was a moment where my life kind of flashed before my eyes. Like, oh my goodness, I'm really going to jail. Like again. Right, like
your first stint. How long were you there for?
My first stint was 2 weeks. Okay. It was for shoplifting.
Yeah. And
I had gotten a DUI previously, but I didn't like have any felonies or anything. So I went in for 2 weeks. At the time, you did halftime on your sentence in California under Governor Jerry Brown. So they gave me 30 days. I did 2 weeks, and then a month later, this happens. I go to jail. I'm sitting in the holding tank that I was in a month ago, except the one above it. And there's still a bunch of people who were there when I was there, still in there. They're like, hey, what's up? You're back? I'm like, oh my God, dude. This is
this my new life?
I don't want to be welcomed back. You don't know me. Like, something's wrong, right? I go to court after probably about a week of being held there. They say we're going to give you 6 years in prison and a strike on your record.
6 years. Is your charge breaking and entering?
Breaking and entering, amongst a couple of other things, grand theft, breaking and entering. So my mom and I have different last names, and they probably didn't know that I broke into my mom's home, because I don't know if our address was the same at the time. I don't know. My mom ended up writing a letter to them saying, hey, like, my son needs to learn a lesson, but 6 years is like a little extensive. Like, I don't want him back at the house. Like, we need to do something, but 6 years, that's crazy. And a strike on his record. Right. If you don't know the 3 strike rule in California, if you get 3 strikes, you go to prison for life.
Right.
So like, I'm a third of the way there. Yeah. Right. I get on the phone after I get back from court. I go, Mom, you don't understand what they're trying to do to me. 6 years in prison, strike on my record. I go, you need to get me a lawyer. Mind you, the last 4 years I've been terrorizing my family, right? Stealing money, drugs and alcohol, selling weed out of the house. I have a 7-year-old sister, like, not putting the family in any particularly good situation, right? And she goes, are you kidding me? Talk to your sister. My little sister's 7 years old. At the time, my mom and stepfather are going through a nasty divorce. I'm in jail. My little sister's just kind of like, I don't know what's happening. Yeah. And in the cutest, most baby voice you could ever think of, she says, so does this mean you're not going to live with me anymore? I lost it. Yeah. I'm this 20-year-old guy sitting in jail thinking I'm big, bad, and tough. I got a couple tattoos. I don't know. There's people in there for capital murder. Right. Like, there's like people there for real crimes, right? I'm 20 years old, trying to cover my eyes, crying my eyes out. Yeah. And I went back to my bunk, looked up at the metal, because I was on the bottom bunk. There's just metal bunks. And it was the first time in my life I thought to myself, I am the only person that got myself in this situation, and I'm the only person that can get myself out of this situation. And that's kind of when everything started to click for me. The reason I share all that is that moment when my sister shared those things was so pivotal to me. I've been sober on Thursday or Friday. It will be 14 years. Oh, wow. So December 19th, 2010 is my sobriety date.
Yeah. Congrats, dude.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. But it was that moment that kind of shifted everything for me. And when I got out of jail, like, I started working in the fashion space, and I started conceptualizing these ideas, and like I was customizing like old military garments, and I wanted to put something that looked like military code. Yeah. But it was really my sister's birthday to like disguise it. Like, I didn't want it to be like Isabel's birthday clothing brand or you know what I mean? Anything like that. And I wanted it to be something cool. And that moment meant so much to me that, like, I just figured stamping my sister's birthday on it was important. Yeah. And that's kind of how I came up with the concept of it. And then kind of to fast forward, I know this is a long story about how it all happened, but I think it's important to share sort of the meat and potatoes of it. I'd moved out to Atlanta. I ran a fashion wholesale company for like 4.5 years. And before that, I was director of international sales at a large streetwear wholesale company. I cut my teeth in the fashion industry doing that. I learned how to do trend forecasting. I learned how to sell clothes. I built a bunch of connections with retailers, people within the space, photographers, models, whatever. I had modeled previously in the past. I was a graphic designer. So like, I knew all the meat and potatoes of the fashion company, right? Of the fashion world, right? And when I was running the fashion wholesale company, I moved to Atlanta. That fashion wholesale company kind of went to the wayside, and like, it was hard for me because fashion was what I always thought my career was going to be. I was like, this is going to be it. And the fashion wholesale company wasn't working out very good. Yeah. I was making, I don't know, 50, 60 grand a year, like, able to live, but I wasn't comfortable by any stretch of the imagination, accumulating debt, whatever. I moved to Atlanta, fashion wholesale company kind of goes to the wayside, and I end up in the crypto space. I started a couple companies in the crypto space, do really well during that. And then the end of, I want to say 21 or 22, I went through a really tough breakup. Very tough. This was a woman that I thought I was going to get married to. Yeah. Right. Kind of devastated me. And at the same time, the crypto space kind of took a dump, along with a majority of the economy, right? Yeah. Interest rates went up. Nobody's buying crypto. It's a risk-off environment. And I kind of decided, I was like, this is the first time in my entire life where I don't necessarily have to work. And I'm going through this devastating moment in my life where like I thought this was the next step. I finally figured it out. You know, I have some stability in my life financially, had the girl, married, have kids, buy a house, onwards and upwards.
Yeah.
And it didn't turn out that way. So I took that year to just kind of decompress and figure out who am I, process through this relationship, go to therapy, work on myself, spend time with my friends, get my body right, get my mind right.
Yeah, yeah.
And towards the end of 2023, during that summer, I was going on the boat a lot with all my friends. And I'd spent a weekend with this gentleman who owned a brand in Atlanta. And he was telling me about kind of how he started the brand. And this kid doesn't have any background in fashion. He doesn't have any background in manufacturing, anything like that. And he's sitting there telling me, and like, this company is very successful. At least perception, you know, is very successful. And I sat there and I'm like, if this kid can do this, like I know the fashion space inside and out. Why can't I do this? And I decided then and there, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And my cousin, who actually is who got me involved in drugs and alcohol, happened to also be sober at the time. This was end of 23. And I reached out to him, and he does manufacturing in Los Angeles. And I was like, full circle moment, dude. It's time to go.
Yeah.
I want to make some hats. What do I got to do? So I hired a graphic designer that I used to work with, created all these designs, and it wasn't really what I wanted. You know, it was a lot of AUG 11, and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, people don't know what AUG 11 is. Like, it's going to be an educational process to try to get these people to understand what is AUG 11.
Yeah.
To get them to buy the brand. They're not going to see an ad for it and go, that's really cool, I want to buy that.
Yeah.
Right. So I canceled out those designs. I went to this event and I saw these people wearing these hats that said like easy or easy does it, or, you know, the caviar cowboy hat that everybody wears.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's what I need to do. I need to do these hats that are going to be simple, that are going to be cool, that people want to buy. Right. And this whole last summer, I have all these tattoos, right? Like if, I don't know if you could see this one, but I have the art tattoo. I had this before I made the art hat.
Yeah. That was one of my questions, is which came first, the tattoos or the
tattoos all came first.
Yeah. That's what I figured.
Yeah. Tattoos all came first. And so on the boat all summer, people are like, oh, that tattoo's really cool. That'd be cool on a shirt. Oh, that tattoo's really cool. That'd be cool on a shirt.
Yeah.
And I was in the gym one day and it clicked. I was like, oh my God, this is it. These are the designs I need to make. I immediately put up 6 designs, sent them off to my cousin, and it kind of just all unfolded like magically in this way that like I couldn't have predicted. It was the time of taking the time to like kind of heal and figure out and get in touch with God and get in touch with myself and like try to find direction and listen to God and be like, which direction do you want me to go? I'm at a crossroads here. And it seems like yesterday, and now here we are a little over a year later, and I'm like, I don't know how all this stuff happened. You know what I mean? It's just been nose of the grindstone figuring it out. But that's kind of like the long and short of how I started the brand.
Yeah. We appreciate the long on this show. So take me back to this moment. This is this beautiful moment where just talking to your 7-year-old sister kind of just jolts you into reality, and you're in jail this time. How much longer until you got out that second time?
So they ended up giving me a year, but they split it into 2 sentences. So it was 6 months in jail and then 6 months in rehab. And then at that time you served 2/3 of your time, as long as it wasn't a violent crime.
Okay.
So I ended up doing 4 months in jail.
Okay. So did you come out of jail and hit the ground running with sobriety, or did you? Yeah.
More or less.
Yeah. And did you get into a 12-step program? Did you?
I did.
Okay.
So my father was sober a majority of my life. I grew up going to the Alano clubs locally with him. So like I was very familiarized with the 12-step program. Excuse me. Very familiarized with the 12-step program. I remember as I was getting ready to get out of jail, like my friends that I had in jail, right? Just the people that I hung out with, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to go party? You're going to go hang out with your chick? You're going to go get wasted? And I was like, honestly, like I owe it to my mom and my sister to spend a day with them. And then like, I'm going to get to a meeting as soon as possible. Because the entire time I was in jail, like again, that moment when my sister said that to me, I think later that day, like I wrote a note on a piece of paper to the guards and slid it under the bars. And I was like, hey, when are you guys going to bring in like AA meetings or NA meetings or like church or anything, because I just knew I needed something else other than what I was surrounded with.
Yeah.
And like, I know this isn't going to be good for me, so I need direction, right? I went to every single meeting I could go to while I was there, every single church service, anything I could do to go and get some positivity in my life.
Yeah.
And I knew the thing that I heard the most is the one thing that you need to change when you get out of here is everything.
Right.
So I got out, spent the day with my mom and my sister, and I went to a meeting. And this kind of full circle-ish moment happened. I walked into this meeting, and there's this kid that I used to do drugs with. He was leading the meeting, and he used to be in and out. Like, I'd be doing drugs with him, and then I wouldn't see him for 3 months. Turns out he was sober during those times, and then he'd come back, we'd do drugs, then he'd be sober. So I walk into this meeting, he's leading it. I go sit in the back. I don't plan on talking. The meeting starts, and I stretch like this, and he goes, "Johnny," and I'm like, "Oh shit."
Yeah.
I had no clue what I was gonna say, right?
Yeah.
And I just shared the only thing that I knew to share. I was like, I've lost everything. I have really no friends that I want to keep in touch with. I've deleted every single number out of my phone except for my best friend since I was 5 and my mom and my dad's phone numbers, so that I don't have any access to any of this stuff. Like, I need help. I don't know what to do. And then that gentleman introduced me to somebody who kind of walked me through the entire process of sobriety.
Yeah.
I stayed in a sober living for probably 2 weeks after I had gotten out while I waited to get into a rehab.
Yeah.
Ended up actually going to this rehab that was like, I was supposed to be there, but like in my mind, I wasn't supposed to be there. It was like a bunch of dudes that I think I think they call it a halfway house.
Yeah.
A bunch of like 40, 50-year-old dudes that are like working out in the backyard, and they're jacked, and they have like swastikas and all these crazy tattoos.
Yeah.
The first night I was at that rehab, there was two or three bunk beds in this room, and it was in Santa Ana. And like, if anybody listening to this knows where Santa Ana is, it like wasn't in the nice part of Santa Ana. Santa Ana's kind of ghetto. And there's this like 50-year-old dude staying in there, and he sneaks out through the window, and he's like, "Don't tell anybody I left, otherwise your ass is grass." And I was like, "Oh my God, what am I doing here?" You know, like, it was one of those.
Right.
And then I got transferred to a nicer facility, and I spent the 6 months in rehab there. But I immediately jumped into sort of a 12-step program and kind of getting my life in order because I knew I needed it.
Yeah. What was, tell me about your, like, how old were you when you started getting into drugs?
My mom tells a story about when I broke my toe. I broke like this part of my toe from skating, because skateboarding was a huge part of my life.
Yeah.
My goal from when I was like, I quit playing baseball when I was like 8 because I was like, "Dad, I'm going to become a professional skateboarder." And he's like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "I promise."
Yeah.
So that was my whole goal. So I broke my toe skateboarding, and they gave me like Tylenol with codeine. And my mom was like, "You took those? Like, you took way too many of those." I was like 13, right? I didn't remember it, but like, I've had this the alcoholism gene in me for a long time. But when it really started to get bad was when I was about 16. I started drinking in high school. I was kind of felt like an outcast. And then I like started hanging out with like the football players and the cheerleaders. And then I would drink, and I'm like, everybody likes me. I've arrived. This feels good. I'm accepted finally.
Yeah.
And then my cousin moved down to get away from his drug and alcohol addiction. The same cousin that actually helped me manufacture the first round of hats.
Yeah.
And he brought his drug and alcohol addiction with him and introduced me to that world. And it was just kind of off to the races.
Yeah.
You know, I was selling a lot of weed at the time, or I was selling a lot of illegal substances at the time.
Yeah.
And I had a bunch of money, you know, I had like, I don't know, at the time, like $8,000 saved up in a shoebox at 16, thinking I was rich, you know? So I could just get whatever I wanted. And it just kind of started there. I got introduced to Oxycontin, which was a huge epidemic in Orange County at the time. And then it just kind of snowballed into everything else over the course of 4 years, and my life just got disastrously bad. Yeah.
Do you feel like you already had an addictive personality?
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so when you got sober, I'm sure like the natural detox of going to jail like helped you. Like when you got out, you probably weren't fiending for anything.
No, yeah.
Right?
After 4 months, it's out of your system.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Right. But did you have, like, I know a lot of people that, you know, finally get sober, often they start, you know, they get a sex addiction, they get a food addiction, you know, their addiction goes somewhere else.
Yeah.
Did you struggle with any of that?
I think I definitely used women like a drug to an extent. And I think there's still a part of me that can struggle with that from time to time. Definitely not to the same extent. Much more honest and open and vulnerable, and like, especially when I don't want to be, right? I have those hard conversations. I'm not perfect at it by any means, but I think women was probably the thing that I went to next. I remember having this moment in rehab. Like, I'd always talk to these girls with like this underlying motive of like, I want to do whatever,
Yeah.
And like, if I got kicked out of rehab, I was going back to jail. Right, so like, I remember having this moment where I'm like, I really got to focus here.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm playing with fire just to like maybe hook up with somebody.
Maybe in rehab. Right. You're not picking the cream of the crop either. But no offense to the ladies I was in rehab with. So yeah, it probably switched to that. And then it switched to exercise and health. I'm a psycho when it comes to stuff like that. I take, 40 different pills every day, like all no prescription, just all like supplements, over the counter stuff. Work out 6 days a week. Like it definitely still pops up. I think I've been able to learn some semblance of moderation to an extent, but it's I think it's something that will likely always be there. I think there's debate whether it's I actually don't know if there's a lot of debate on it, but I think there's some debate on like if it's a genetic thing or not, or whatever, but that obsessive gene is very thick within me personally and within my family genetics. Right. So like, I definitely switched a little bit.
Yeah. It's tough because it also probably has helped you become the businessman.
Absolutely. It's that double-edged sword I was talking about.
Because you can obsess over something, and so you can work 16-hour days. And you can just be singularly focused. And it's
good and it's bad. It leads to burnout rather quickly. It leads to, I mean, it sounds like you might have a little bit of that too, that obsessiveness
I don't know. I'm sure it's a spectrum, right? But,
for sure.
But I definitely get obsessed with things and go down rabbit holes and stay down there a while. I've been lucky to not, get involved with substances and stuff. But tell me about before your journey with sobriety, did you have much of a relationship with God?
Not really, actually. I used to go to church on my own accord, but that was largely because they had a skate park in front of it every Tuesday night.
Right.
So me and my friends were like, oh, we could go skate and like skate in front of chicks and meet girls, between like 12 and 15.
Yeah.
There's a couple moments I remember, like they were sharing something about, it was a Bible study or whatever. And there's a couple moments I remember from that, but I never really had a relationship with God. Religion was not a part of my family. Not so much.
Yeah. And so what was it for you? Was it like specific parts of AA and the higher power that really gripped you and got you this new relationship with God?
Absolutely. Entirely. I think one of the beautiful things about 12-step program that I'm involved in is that I was in rehab and I remember hearing, hey, you don't have to believe in the same God I believe in. You don't have to believe in any God. God can be a doorknob for you if you want it to be. You just have to know that God isn't you.
Yeah.
You are not God.
Yeah.
And then this kid was sharing, and he's like, one of the things I love is like, I can pull some things from Buddhism. I can pull some things from Judaism, from Christianity, from all these other religions, and like kind of amalgamate this into my own version of what God is for me. Yeah. And that makes sense for me right now. And maybe someday that will become more fully formed. But like when he said that, it all clicked for me. And I was like, oh, like I can have a relationship with God as long as I understand it. And I know that over the process of time, like it will sort of fully form and change and become more well understood. Yeah. But it all kind of started with just this idea of like, I know that I am not God. There's a very specific moment. I was reading out of the 12-step book with my sponsor when I was in rehab. I remember the bench we were sitting on. I remember what the temperature was like. He came in and I think we were reading through the 3rd step, and I'm going to chop this up. This isn't verbatim, but basically what it says is like, we looked up at the stars and we realized that this can't all just be a vastness heading nowhere in no direction, and our lives are meaningless. And I remember sitting there and just being like, I had this moment where I was just like, if life is truly meaningless and there is no God, there is no higher power, then like, what are all these coincidences that have happened in my life? You know, like life cannot be meaningless. And it was kind of in that moment when things really started to click for me, and I started to at least be more open to the concept of a relationship with a higher power.
Yeah. For me, you know, when people talk about like, why are you religious, or why do you like side with Christianity, or why are you in an organization that has like rules and regulations, you know? And for
you
me,
sheep, what are you doing, you sheep?
Yeah. And like, dude, I'll be a sheep if I got an awesome shepherd.
Absolutely.
You know? But like for me, God is way more about like my desperation to need a God. Like I've just come to that point in life where I'm like, whether you believe in him or not, that's great for you. But for me, I need a God.
Absolutely.
I need a maker. I need a higher power. I need someone that I know, brings full purpose to my life and just orients me in things.
Guidance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, like you were saying, the meaningless, like to me, God is just the perfect antidote for nihilism.
100%.
You know, and
nihilism and apathy.
Yeah, and I'm not interested in those things.
No, it's a very boring life.
Boring and depressing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that'll take me down a dark path real quick.
What was a moment for you? I love hearing the story of how people sort of came to like their conclusion or their relationship with God. What was it? What was kind of that moment for you where you were like,
it's weird because mine, I don't know that there's even one point I can look back on, because I was raised in religion, and so, you know, from the get-go, I'm going to church as a baby, and I was baptized in my church when I was 8, but I always remember feeling spiritual and feeling like there was something more, and so the things I learned in church at a young age, they resonated with me even as a little boy.
Yeah.
And so I think I was blessed with just the gift of faith. Like I've of course had my struggles and my doubts, but I've never really had a period of existential crisis or spiritual crisis. Like I always felt like, nice. Yeah.
Guys over here bragging, man.
I've got my own crises, but yeah, I feel like all the crap I've gone through and dealt with, like that is one area where God just, you know, extended his hand and was like, you know, you're not going to have to struggle with this. You can struggle with some other things.
Yeah.
But, I think, and you know, as I became an adult, I had way more experiences that felt like, okay, like I've always believed this, but now I'm experiencing it.
Yeah.
Right now it's really real.
Yeah.
And I think it's more when I had that desperation, when I felt hopelessness for the first time.
You have to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
to understand it, you have to be here.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, sure, I had some tough moments when I was a kid. Like we had some tough years where we were on food stamps. We had some tough years where my dad had some health issues, but I never understood at that age. But for the most part, I had a great childhood. So I never really felt what actual hopelessness feels like, what actual true crippling loneliness feels like.
Yeah.
I never felt what a real broken heart feels like.
Yeah.
You know, sure, I had, you know, Deborah White in the 6th grade broke up with me at recess. Yeah. I thought I was brokenhearted.
Life was over.
Yeah.
It's downhill from here, boys.
It all started
6th grade. I'm out.
It all started with Deborah, but
oh, poor Deborah.
But
where's Deborah now? Do we know?
Sweet Deborah. Yeah, we're friends on Facebook.
Really?
Yeah. No,
you guys are basically best friends.
Deborah's a sweetheart. She was she was one of the girls that learned at a young age that guys liked her. And that she could easily pick which guy she wanted to be her boyfriend. Yeah. And so she did.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, she picked Zach over me because Zach was new to the school.
And where's Zach at now?
Zach.
Did he peak in 6th grade?
No, he probably peaked in 9th grade. No, I love Zach too. Like Zach, we're not really in touch anymore, but yeah, it's funny. I remember all these people, but yeah, as I got older, you know, I experienced real heartbreak, and that's when I was like, now I don't even like. I've always wanted a relationship with God. I've always enjoyed the luxury of having that relationship, but now I need it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm in a pit and I need somebody to reach their hand down.
Yeah.
And I've been just fine with trying to dig out myself in the past, but it's not working anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, it's so interesting to think about those moments where you're just in that pit of despair and you're sitting there and thinking like, why am I here right now? Why is this happening to me, right? And then you're faced with a choice. I'm either going to continue to be in this pit of despair or like I'm going to try something different.
Yeah.
And clearly having no God in my life is not working for me.
Yeah.
And I mean, this has been my experience. It's been your experience too. Yeah. I'm sure there's people out there with far different experiences who maybe don't have a relationship with God and they're sitting here and they're like, you guys are sheep or you guys are crazy or whatever. But for me, it's been the only thing that's worked. And like, I feel like even I've gone through multiple growth spurts of my relationship with God.
Sure. Yeah.
Specifically like since I got sober. Right. And I feel like currently where I'm at is, I guess this makes sense considering that I'm the oldest I've ever been, you know? So like it would make sense that I'm, you know, getting a better relationship with God as long as I've been trying the entire time. But I go through growth spurts and I hit sort of this wall right before I moved to Atlanta in August of 2020. And I had to connect with a new group of guys, a new meeting, new people. My life was just had changed drastically. And I got involved with a really, really good group of guys, a lot of older gentlemen that had a lot of time in sobriety, who kind of guided me and shepherded me like sort of back into the realm of like, let's build a relationship with God.
Yeah.
And it feels like this time it kind of clicked for whatever reason, probably because I like thought I had life figured out to an extent. And then I realized, oh, I don't. And I'm like 31 years old.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
And then I built this relationship with God. And then all of a sudden, all these amazing, beautiful things started happening in my life. And I don't even think it's just building a relationship with God. It's that like humble version of like, I don't have the answers. Show me what to do. I'm going to stop trying to put my fingers in the pot and mix it up myself.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you show me which direction I need to go.
Yeah.
And by no means have I done it perfect, but
Sure.
like by taking a back seat, life has gotten exponentially better.
Yeah.
And I try to think about this often. Like, I don't want to end up back in that place again of like, oh, I fell out and now I got to get back on track. It's just, now it's just a level of like consistency and discipline and continuing that daily practice.
Yeah. And for me, I've always been of the opinion, like, I don't even care. Of course I believe with all my heart that God exists, but I don't even care if I'm wrong, because it's
working, right?
Right. Yeah.
Who cares?
This is, if it's this grand spiritual placebo effect.
Yeah.
I'm
fantastic.
I'm here for it.
I don't know anything else. So let's keep it going.
Yeah. And because to me, what I love about having a relationship with divinity is, to me, you can't really have that without humility and gratitude.
Absolutely.
And
prerequisites.
I just think those things are essential to be happy.
Yeah.
You know, and to really enjoy life. Because I'm like, whenever I find myself in like my most miserable state, I'm usually way less grateful. You know? And of course it's easy.
Yeah.
It's easy when things are going bad to be like, well, what am I grateful for? This horrible situation.
Yeah.
But when I'm just consciously like every day searching for moments of gratitude, like that's, whether it's formal or not, that's a prayer.
You can't be grateful and depressed at the same time.
Not really.
They can't exist in the same moment.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why, like, there's this song I love by this old, like, pop punk band called The Academy Is.
Okay. Yeah, I know them.
He has this line where he says, always up and down, never down and out. And I love that, because I'm like,
that's good.
I'm like, yeah, dude, I can do that.
That's your first hat. Always up and down, never down and out.
Hey, let's go.
Jot it down.
Yeah, but it's
Hat's
like,
coming soon.
I'm like, I can't promise, like, I can't pretend that I'll just always be in a good mood
No.
or be happy.
Yeah.
Or even you ever talk to people that you're like, hey, how's it going, man? And they're like, oh, I'm great. Things are perfect.
Like, yeah, right.
Or like I'm a 10,
Yeah.
you know? And I'm like, dude, I'm happy to be cruising along at a 6,
Yeah.
you know? Cause I know there'll be moments that are 9s and 10s.
Absolutely.
Right. But I also know there'll be moments of 1s and 2s.
Absolutely.
So I'm happy to be at a chill 6.
Yeah.
But
I think on that topic, something I think about often is like, I've explained it like this in meetings before, and I've heard other people explain it like this. When I first got sober, and first getting sober is like when I started to have a relationship with God, right? Mm-hmm. It was a 16-lane highway, mm-hmm. right? 8 lanes on both sides. And then as I've gotten more and more sober, I've gotten to understand like what I can and can't get away with. I've gotten to understand like how God works. Yeah. I've gotten to understand like, oh, I can't really be like a dick to girls anymore. I can't really like get away with acting like a scumbag in business.
Yeah.
Not that I ever really did, but like, you know, you make those silly mistakes.
Your tendencies.
Yeah. It goes from a 16 lane to like 12 and mm-hmm. then it's 8. And then now I'm on like a 3-lane highway. I'm like, I don't really have a lot of room to like navigate and mess up anymore because I know kind of like where I lie in. Right. And then those highs and those lows, it used to be maybe something like this, right? Where the highs are really high and the lows are really low. Mm-hmm. Now it's kind of like I have some highs, I have some lows. Mm-hmm. And do you study Stoic philosophy at all?
I've a little bit.
Yeah, Stoic philosophy kind of instilled in me this concept of like, when it gets too high, just remember that it can get really low. Mm-hmm. And when it gets really low, just remember that it can get really high. So it's kind of helped me to stay in that sort of middle zone of like, this is great, this is fantastic, but let's enjoy it for a moment and just get back to like humility.
Yeah.
Like, let's just keep cruising and be grateful for it. Absolutely. But like when you get really high, everything that goes up's got to come down.
Right.
You know? And when you get really low, remember, like, you're not going to stay down here forever.
Yeah.
Got to come up for air at some point.
Right. Yeah. And I have a good friend, his name's Madison, and he was telling me, we were having this similar conversation, and he's like, yeah, people that claim they're like always at a 9 out of 10, he's like, they should probably practice some empathy.
Probably. Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Because there's, like, if you think about it, even if your life is, you're in a state where things are just smooth and golden.
Yeah.
Like, there's probably someone in your life that's going through some extreme pain.
Yeah.
You know? And if you're walking around as a 9 all the time,
give some of that to somebody else, man.
Yeah, give it away, but also
get somebody from 6 to 7 or 5 to 6.
Yeah,
you know?
But sometimes, like, if you're around somebody that's walking around as a 3, sometimes you got to come down a little bit to match their energy.
Yeah.
And yeah, when you deeply empathize and like help somebody that's suffering, it can bring you down a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a good down.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Another thing that makes me think about, kind of a little off topic, but still generally what we're talking about, something I've been talking with my therapist a lot about lately is I think about like almost expecting, I think expectations are sort of predetermined resentments.
Yeah, totally.
More or less, right? Or predetermined like bad days, if we want to generalize it.
Yeah.
Something my therapist and I've talked about a lot is like, especially in the process of building this company over the last year, I've had days where I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what we're doing. I don't know how we're going to get from point A to B or B to C or whatever it is, right? And he's like, do you think that Jeff Bezos went from 0 to 100 just in a straight line up? He's like, no, he's had ups and downs. He's like, if you just expect the fact that, yes, bad things are going to happen, it's not going to be fun, it's not going to be enjoyable. Mm-hmm. If you can expect those things, chances are your journey is going to be a lot smoother, because when they happen, you're not going to be so devastated, right? And it's kind of that idea of like the highs and the lows, but it's so easy to forget that sometimes, especially when you're in the moments of it. You know, you have a week where you're like, things just aren't clicking, man.
Right.
But it's like, oh yeah, I kind of expected these things, and like, we're going to figure it out. We'll get through it. And sure, maybe I'll be cruising at a 6 for a couple of weeks, but like, it's better than being at a 3.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Is that philosophy a little connected to, you have on so many of your hats this phrase, unbreakable resilience?
Yeah.
Where does...
Got it right there.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. What made you connect so much with those two words?
I think about all of the things that I have been through in my life, pre-sobriety, going through my drug and alcohol addiction, and then going into like my sobriety and like all the things that I went through in sobriety. I was broke for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, like really struggling to make ends meet, trying to chase my dreams. And
I'm familiar.
Same. I was sitting down with that first designer that I hired, and he asked me to put together a mood board and some phrases and things that sort of stood out. And he put together this first rough draft of designs, and he's like, we need like a catchphrase or something. And immediately, without thinking, I said unbreakable resilience. And I didn't think about it in the moment, right? I wasn't quite sure where that came from. But in like the days and the weeks following that, I was like, where did that come from? That was like, not like, oh, I'm hyping myself up, but I'm like, why did I resonate so much with that so quickly? It was something internal in me. And I just think like every time I have fallen down, sure, maybe I'll have a day of sadness or grief or whatever it is, or a month or a few months, but I always come back stronger every single time. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. But for me, like just me personally, my experience in life, like I always come back bigger, better, stronger, faster.
Yeah.
And I think that's partially that sort of obsessiveness. I think that's partially like that sense of perfectionism that I have, right?
Well, you're obsessed with your comeback, your personal comeback.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Obsessed with the comeback, obsessed with like, I am not going to let this hold me down, and I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah.
And I think that largely comes from kind of my parents, heavily from my mom. She always was just like, figure it out.
Yeah.
Maybe in not the nicest way. Sometimes my mom was a very loving person. She loved the crap out of me. I love my mom. Great relationship. But like, she was very blunt and direct with me. She's like, get over it.
Yeah.
You know, figure it out, man.
Right,
like nobody's coming to save you. Let's go.
Yeah.
And I think that's just been instilled in me from a young age. And like, I especially learned it in sobriety. You know, now I have like a set of spiritual tools and a group of individuals that I can now rely on that make sort of that maybe come back a little bit easier. Yeah. But yeah, it's just this thing of like, I mean, let's look at, I was in the crypto space, did very well, printing money. Like absurdly, like it felt illegal, right? And I'm not saying this to try to flex. I'm saying it as like, this is just as wild to me as it is like anybody else who experienced, right? I got very lucky, right place, right time. I'm no genius by any stretch of the imagination. And then it all came crashing down. My girlfriend leaves me, running out of money, starting to pile up debt. And I'm like, oh crap, what am I gonna do? And then that moment is kind of what, now we look at the company, right? We started November 1st of 2023. Here we are, December, 14th, 2024, 13 months later. Like I look at all the things that we've been able to accomplish as a company, phenomenal first year in business, like starting from scratch, no funding, no, I didn't have anybody help me out. Like I had a little bit of help along the way after we had gotten started, but like that is the embodiment of why Unbreakable Resilience is on the hat. I'm like, in the moment I felt like my life was done. My career's over. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to go get a job, work a 9 to 5 that I hate. That's it. Yeah. Instead it was like, nah, we're going to figure this out and we're going to come back bigger, better, stronger, faster. Yeah. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. I love the phrase so much because to me it's like, it's saying that your resilience is what's unbreakable, not you. Yeah. Like you'll get broken all the time.
Yeah.
Right. But it doesn't really matter if your resilience is unbreakable.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
I want to read this quote to you and I want to hear your thoughts.
I love a good quote. Lay it on me.
Have you ever read anything by Primo Levi? He's a Holocaust survivor.
I did years ago. Okay. Either read it or I bought his book and never read it. I could not tell you what it was. I do own one of his books.
Okay, great. Well, he's talking about he's a Holocaust survivor.
What's his big book though? Like that one book that everybody read of his or bought and didn't read.
Darn it. I can't
We'll come back to it. It'll come to
us. But he's talking about in the camps, in the concentration camps, just the general hopeless state that everyone's in, right? And he talks about how a lot of people would get to the spot where they would go and jump on the electric wire fence to kill themselves. And he said, a lot of times, like, he got to a point where he's like, I don't even know why I didn't kill myself, but there was something within me. Yeah. And this is what he says. He says, were it not for this last senseless, crazy residue of unavoidable hope. Saying if it wasn't for that, he would have jumped. Yeah. So were it not for this last senseless, crazy residue of unavoidable hope. And I just loved that so much. I even I named one of my playlists after that, which is such a long playlist.
It just has, if it were not for ... Yeah, I know what it says.
It's like a paragraph.
Yeah.
Yeah. What does that sentence make you think and feel?
Delusion. Almost, right?
Yeah.
Like you got to kind of be delusional to an extent. It also makes me think about, I've interacted with a lot of people who have thought about suicide. It's very sad, right? I've lost some friends to suicide. And I want to be very sensitive when I say this. I'm not trying to say that I am better than or worse than or any way, shape, or form, but I can relate to kind of that generalized story because I've been in similar situations that led certain people to suicide, but I've never had that thing where I'm like, I'm going to go off myself, right? And I don't know what I can attribute that to. I don't know what that is. I think some people probably do have a chemical makeup that leads them to that, which is largely just that sucks. You know, that's very sad and they didn't ask for that. And I feel for people who have to deal with that. You know, people very close to me who have gone through these phases and it's like, it sucks to watch, but I can relate to that because I've had so many moments of just like, life is over. It feels like, but there's something inside of me that's just like, not yet. Not yet. And I hope I never get to the point of, okay, this is it. You know, I hope it's always until I'm 125 years old on my deathbed, you know, and I'm like, not yet.
Right.
I'm like, you fought to the end, you know? I don't know what that is, but it's just, unbreakable resilience. You know?
What does
it make you think of?
I thought it was interesting that he says, like, if it were not for this last senseless, crazy residue.
Yeah. Senseless, crazy residue.
Like it's just this
little speck.
Yeah. It's like he found in an ocean a single droplet of hope.
Yeah.
And was like, there it is. I'm going to go find it and hold on to it. And that's my only option.
Yeah.
And I just love that because I think sometimes when you feel hopeless, which honestly, it's easy to feel hopeless, even with something trivial. Like if you feel like you're struggling at work or you're feeling like your relationship is dying, you feel like there's a million things that can make you feel hopeless. And so to me, I love the idea that I don't need some grand symbol of hope to hold on to. I can find a tiny, tiny strand. I can find a tiny last senseless, crazy residue of something.
Senseless is such a good way to describe it too. Because anybody would be like, why would you even believe that you're going to get out of this situation? And it's the people who are delusional enough to believe it that do get out of those situations.
And
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think this is maybe a funny comparison, but I think maybe you can relate it at your age, but I think sometimes people, whether they say it to me or they're just thinking it about me, I can tell they're like, dude, you need to stop being so picky and like find a nice girl and settle down already.
A nice gal.
Right? Yeah. Just a nice gal. And I'm like, I'm over here holding on to this crazy, last senseless, crazy residue of hope that I can have true, meaningful, life-altering love and not just find someone.
Yeah.
You know?
Which, how many people do you think, people are going to get upset about this, but how many people do you think are married just because they found someone and they're like, this is good enough? And that is not how I want to live my life. No. In any way, shape, or form.
Let me ask you a harder question.
Oh, I'm ready for it.
Of all the people you know in your entire life, all the relationships you have, all the married people you know, how many married relationships do you look at and say, I would love to have that? Those guys have it.
I love all of you guys. Very few.
Right.
Very, very. I could probably think of a couple.
Yeah.
There's my sponsor, it's like 75 or 80 years old. He's been with the same woman.
Just an old codger.
Just an old codger. He's been with the same woman for 50 years. Only woman he's ever been with.
Yeah.
The relationship that they have. His wife just went through tongue cancer. The way that man showed up for her, the way that she showed up for him was when he was drinking and doing drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
Like the love that they share, the things that he's willing to sacrifice for this woman, the way he got so torn up about anything she was going through, the way he showed up for her. I look at that and I'm like, man, I can only aspire to have something like that.
Yeah.
And I know that in me being diligent and doing this work on myself, and I'm bound to make quite a few mistakes along the way, like I can have that, that last senseless, you know, I can have that if I just keep going.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing. So many people just do it just to do it because it's so easy to get caught up in it, right? I found myself getting caught up in it recently. Like most of my friends are married. Not all of them.
Yeah.
Not a lot of the ones that I like hang out with on a day-to-day basis that are like my close, tight-knit group. Yeah. But like a lot of my friends are married, having kids. I'm like, oh, that looks nice. Yeah. Holidays come around. They're going to pumpkin patches. They're going to, you know what I mean? Holidays at their family's house.
They're seeing Santa at the mall.
They're seeing Santa at the mall. Yeah. You know, you see them, you see their Instagram life. You're like, that looks so nice. I would love to just have somebody to just
and
like,
you're just eating a pizza in bed.
Let's drink a pumpkin spice latte together. I don't even like those things, but I do that with you because we're in the Christmas spirit. But it's also like, if I were to just do that and settle, what does the rest of my life look like? And like, I know that it will come with time. I just have to be disciplined, and it's harder as you get older too. How old are you?
37.
I'm 34.
Yeah.
You know, like there's some times where I look at myself and I'm like, people are probably like, yo, why is this guy 34 and still single?
Yeah.
What's wrong with this guy? You know, and it's like, I'm just holding out hope, I guess.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. How does your sponsor, how does he talk about his wife?
With the highest regard.
Yeah.
The highest regard. He, something that he will often say, he's like, the way that she showed up for me and our family and did not leave me in that moment where I was putting them through absolute hell, I will never be able to repay that woman back, and I love her with all of my heart. He always speaks so highly of her. And it's like, how many people do you know who talk about their wife? They're like, oh, I just need to go on a golf trip with the boys so I could, or let's go play basketball so I can get the heck out of here. My wife's driving me crazy. Like, sure, in a relationship with somebody, you're going to get sick of them.
Sure.
Your friends, your family, specifically a woman that you've decided to marry, have a child with. Like, you're going to have stuff, right? But like, I hope to never be that guy that like every time you talk to him, it's like, oh my goodness, dude, I need to get out of here. Yeah. Or like hides out at work for 4 extra hours than he needs to. It's like, I don't want that. Yeah. And I know that that's going to take more time on the front end, front loading that self-work, doing the stuff I don't want to do, reading the books, doing the therapy, journaling, doing the work on my downtime when I really don't want to be. I want to be sitting back, watching Netflix or something. Yeah. But like, if I do that work eventually on the back end, like I hopefully won't be that guy that's like, can't stand her.
Yeah, I think the worst thing, like my true and living nightmare is to think that my wife is a burden.
Yeah.
Like that's so horrible.
I want it to be 2 + 2 = 5.
Yeah.
You know, I want somebody that turbocharges my life, whose life I turbocharge. And we can do, I heard this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful quote that said basically, you can sing certain notes by yourself, but when you do it with somebody else, you can sing notes that cannot be sung by one person individually.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was so beautiful. And I want my marriage to be like that. I want us to be able to do things that we could not do individually, that we can only do as a couple together, that are fulfilling, beautiful, bring positivity to the world, bring positivity to our lives. We make each other's lives better. Yeah. You know?
What is it about a girl when you are like in the early stages? What is it about her when you start to feel like this could be something? Like just for you personally, what about a girl like sets her apart that makes you start to really fall?
Some girls are gonna be upset. Family values, for sure. drive, ambition, relationship with God, and a sense of like going out of their way. I can be a very insecure man in certain relationships, right? I can be a very secure man in certain relationships. I have my moments of insecurity, and when a girl goes out of her way to make sure that I know that I am loved and that she is there for me, that melts me.
Yeah.
You know, ladies, don't get any ideas if you're watching this. I'm on to you.
He is unmeltable.
I'm unmeltable resilience.
There's a new hat.
But yeah, right. But just like going out of the way to like just show up and going out of their way to let it be known that like I'm loved, because that's how I show love to my partners. Like I go out of my way, you know, if I'm going to be late for something, I make sure that I'm like as communicative as possible. I'll get them presents when they're not expecting it. I'll go out of their way to, you know, just help make their life easier. And when it's reciprocated to me in that way, like it just melts me.
Yeah. And it sounds like a lot of it comes back to just safety.
Ultimately,
just feeling like, yeah, I have my insecurities, but I don't really care when I'm around this person because they make me feel like those aren't issues.
That's very hard to find too. Yeah. I felt a lot of the prerequisites that I would love to have in an ideal relationship, right? But I don't know that I've ever felt all of them.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's okay to expect to want all of them. I think it exists. I think it will be very rare to find, and when I find it, I'll hold on to it like a diamond. You know, I don't know. Yeah. But I have yet to, I think, truly, and I've had moments of it, I have yet to, I think, truly be able to experience what it feels like to allow myself to be completely vulnerable. Yeah. And know that I am loved regardless. And I don't blame the women for that. I think I largely blame myself for that because I don't know that I've been at a place where I'm comfortable enough with myself to let those things be seen. And it's something I'm working on very diligently.
But sometimes it's just a mysterious like chemistry issue. Like,
what do you mean?
Meaning like you don't feel fully vulnerable and open with somebody, but for some reason you just do with this person.
Yeah.
Right?
It's not something you put your finger on. It just happens.
And maybe this person is very loving and empathetic and all the right things, but for some reason, some biochemical mystery with the other person, your heart just, you know?
Yeah.
And I can't quite put my finger on
it's
it,
weird.
But I've for sure felt it.
I think something that's interesting on that topic, it's kind of like trusting your gut to an extent, right? I think one thing that I realized in the last couple of years is like, I've been with women that are like, on paper, you know, sign me to the contract. Yeah. You know, like we could do this. This would work out great, right? Maybe not everything's met, but like 85 to 90% of it. But internally, there's this like gut feeling. And I think what I've come to learn is it's okay for your gut feeling to be a reason to not be in a relationship with that person. Yeah. Even though on paper it looks fantastic. I've gotten into plenty of situations where I've been in a relationship longer than I have because on paper it makes sense. But my gut was telling me something different and I didn't trust my gut. And I've realized that if I trust my gut in that, and I trust my gut in every other situation in life, specifically when it comes to business, running the company, etc., like life tends to kind of flow in the direction that it seems to need to be flowing, and it seems to flow a lot easier. And it's okay for your gut to kind of be a guiding force. And I almost look at my gut as like God. Right? Yeah. Like, oh, that's a God talking to me. I can't pinpoint it. I don't know what it is. Right. Maybe it's because I didn't have enough probiotics. Like, I don't know what it is, right? But like, you have to trust that and follow that, like instinctually. Yeah.
I heard this study that they surveyed all these people and asked about love, and they asked like that they found out that the number one indicator that somebody was starting to fall in love was obsessive thinking.
Really?
About the other person.
How many times have you heard, don't obsess over the other person though, right? Like where my mind goes with that is like, oh, that means that you're insecure and you don't know what you're doing. You know what I mean? But it's like, you kind of like, you can't help but obsessively just obsess over that person.
But also like, maybe some people just don't like the word obsessed, but like I want to be obsessed with my wife.
Absolutely.
I want to have a PhD in my wife.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I don't know. Do you like Jordan Peterson? Do you like his
Love
stuff?
Jordan Peterson. I think he's great.
So I love
one of the best thinkers of our generation.
Yeah, he talks a lot about how there's a lot of couples that claim that like, oh, I know everything about my spouse already. There's no more spontaneity. There's no more surprises. I know all their stories. I know the way they talk. And he's like, that's the most ridiculous thing in the world, because he's like, you don't even know that much about yourself.
That's a good point.
You know?
Yeah.
So to think you know everything about somebody else is insane.
Yeah, it's a pretty bold statement.
But I love that thought.
You almost kind of have to say that, though.
Right.
When you're asked in private, maybe.
Right.
Maybe not. You're talking to your buddy about your wife. You're like, I don't know, dude. But like when you're asked like in a survey, like, of course I know everything about my wife, because they're going to be mad if I say no. You know?
Yeah, but I just love that notion that I can have the rest of my life to get to know every nook and cranny I possibly can. Yeah. And they're always evolving. So I'm always getting to know a new version of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the hope is that you evolve in the same direction as that person. You guys don't evolve separately.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I feel like that kind of freaks me out when it comes to a long-term relationship. I'm like, oh my goodness. I hope that we don't evolve this way. We evolve this way together. Yeah. And maybe, we'll go like this and always meet back in the middle.
Right.
That takes a willingness, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the big part of that is like, no matter how much they have this and this and this that you love about them, it comes back to like their willingness to admit they're wrong, their willingness to work on themselves, their willingness to do all this work that like you're also willing to be doing.
Absolutely.
Because then the other things, the personality traits, the quirks, like those don't matter as much.
Yeah.
If you have all those core values.
100%.
Tell me why your last heartbreak hurt so much. Yeah, get a good posture.
Yeah. I need to get comfortable for this one. I would say the reason the last heartbreak hurt so much was I've been really unpacking this a lot lately, like very deeply. Not necessarily by choice.
Yeah.
It just has kind of happened, I don't think I had ever felt that validated by somebody before in my life. The way that person felt like they needed me in a very specific way.
That only you could deliver.
That only she could make me feel wanted in that way.
Yeah.
And it's been really hard to process, because in my mind, when I feel these emotions of sadness, of processing the relationship, right? It's like, well, that must have been love. I must have been in love with that person. And I don't want to diminish and say that I wasn't in love with that person to an extent, for sure. I don't know if I was as in love with them as I thought I was.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. I'm not sure. Again, still unpacking.
It's hard to quantify, though.
It's very hard to quantify.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know for sure, and I probably won't know for a while. I might not ever know.
Yeah.
It's just an experience that happened and changed me and altered my life, right? In a good way and, some not so great ways, but ultimately all for the better.
Yeah.
But it was a sense of validation that I was able to get from this person in a way that I had never experienced before. And to me, it's kind of scary to know that somebody else can wield that much power over you.
Yeah.
That's also kind of the beauty of love.
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to our conversation of like safety ultimately with the partner. Like the woman that I end up marrying, who's going to be the mother of my children, I hope I can feel those things from her. I hope I don't solely expect to feel validated from her, and I can find that on my own through myself and give myself those things, which I am learning daily, right? I'm getting better at. But I would hope that I can get that sort of validation, but also feel safe in the relationship.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a little crazy to say, I don't know, to get validation from somebody else. My therapist says validation is for parking. I actually have it like written down and pinned up on my whiteboard. But like, I don't know. I feel like there's so many things, right, that you're not supposed to get from somebody, but like we're also so human, and like I don't think we're ever going to be able to fully rid ourselves of these like minor insecurities.
Yeah.
Like, everybody wants to be validated from other people. Sure. In an ideal world, if you're an optimal human, maybe you're Superman, I don't know what it is. You don't get validated from other people. You validate yourself with every single thing that you do. But I think that like, we'll always have that to an extent. I'm never going to be perfect with it. But like, I would like to mostly be able to give myself all of that validation. But getting it from my partner who I love and who I'm building a life with, like, wouldn't be so bad.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just validation. It's also just feeling fully seen.
Yeah.
And feeling like whoever you're with understands Johnny better than any other human.
Yeah. Besides maybe my mom and my dad.
Right.
Yeah.
But also not only understands you, but like sees how good you are.
Yeah.
Right.
Even when you don't see it.
Yeah. Because it's funny. Like, I've been with a couple girls that like, they almost like, it sounds weird and cheesy, but they almost like remind you how amazing you are.
They believed in you more than you believed in yourself. You're like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Really? Me?
Yeah, are you crazy?
Yeah.
But there's just not another feeling like that.
No, there
when
really isn't.
When you're also, when you feel the same about them too.
Yeah.
When you're like, oh, I wish you could see, you know, how I see you. And they're like, yeah, that's how I feel about you.
Yeah.
You idiot.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, man. I don't know. It's so, talking about double-edged swords, like, love is something that is so intoxicating, so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's the only way you could ever experience those feelings is from, you know, a significant other. Yeah. And it is so fucking painful. So painful. Yeah. It just hurts so bad. Yeah. Almost to the point where it's like, I don't think I want to do that one again.
Well, that's why so many people like get really cynical and jaded about love and decide, well, there's no one out there for me, or they decide that the opposite sex is the enemy. Yeah. And that they're just doomed to be hurt. Yeah. Because the second you find someone that you find that amazing, you open up your heart to very real damage.
Yeah, absolutely. You're opting in to the potential that somebody could rip your heart out and ruin your life for a long time. You're opting into that. You're choosing that.
It's a harrowing.
And it's a lot easier to not.
Yeah.
Of course.
It's a harrowing
But it's also a lot easier to just have some crappy corporate job that you don't care about. They don't care about you for the rest of your life and never realize your dreams either. Yeah. It's like there's risk involved in everything that's worthwhile, right?
Yeah. Another thing Jordan Peterson says I love is he always says, like, you're all in on life. Yeah. So you might as well go all in.
Yeah. Feel all the things. Yeah. All of them.
Yeah.
It's funny talking about this last breakup. The hat you were wearing before you put that one on, Wish You Were Here. Yeah. That entire collection called No Hard Feelings. I didn't realize it until after I had put the collection together, but I sampled probably 60 different hats, right? And there's some that were, emotional, some that weren't, whatever. But like there's Wish You Were Here, and then I have the Loverboy hat that says I don't miss, let alone miss you on the side. Like the collection's titled No Hard Feelings. Yeah. Like there's quite a few hats in there that are very sort of like, ooh, did somebody hurt this guy? Yeah. And like, yeah, somebody did hurt me. And I didn't realize it, but I remember I was driving through Colorado to go to this men's retreat, and I'm sitting in the car with no Wi-Fi in the passenger seat of my friend's truck, like designing that Wish You Were Here hat. And I'm like, oh, I'm in pain right now. This hurts, dude. I still feel really bad about this relationship, Dude, But it was so empathetic and so cathartic. Maybe empathetic isn't the right word, but it was so cathartic to be able to design that collection, get it out, and then the response that people had to it. And it was like, that's an interesting way to be able to get those emotions and those feelings out. Right. And it's cool that people responded to it, Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
Dude, when I went through my last breakup, literally like 2 days later, one of my high school best friends I've known for 20 years. Yeah. He actually lives in Atlanta. He came out to Utah and he's like, bro, we're going on a road trip. Yeah. And I've always wanted to hit all 50 states, right? And I was at 48. Yeah. And so I'm like, we got to go to either North Dakota or Alaska. But
we're doing both.
But I was like, I got like 4 days. Yeah. So we got to go to North Dakota. Yeah. So we drive to North Dakota while I'm in extreme amounts of pain.
Very sad.
Very sad. Yeah. But it's just me and my dog, you know? But it's funny. There were some moments where like we're on long stretches of road and, you know, he's just driving or texting or something. And I'm just like curled up in a ball looking at my phone. And then like, you know, we were still kind of texting, you know, but it was over.
Yeah.
But, you know, there were still some like aftershock texts that went out.
The worst text to have. God.
And so
it feels kind of good, but you're like, why am I doing this?
But ultimately it took years off my life.
Yeah, for sure.
But
added a few grays in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a couple. These are from this girl. These are from this girl.
Yeah, they're categorized. But yeah, dude, there was a moment where I was kind of in a blanket because I was kind of taking a nap.
Yeah.
But then like a text came in and I just like started crying and I'm just like, dude, what is happening? I'm just like in North Dakota, like
crying in the
crying with
seat.
One of my best friends, like listening to music from high school.
All like, because you opted in. Dude. Yeah. You opted into that.
In a weird way, I'm still ultimately grateful for what I went through.
100%.
And it sounds like masochistic, but I would do it again.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you kind of don't have a choice.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Or just live alone.
Yeah, what's the alternative?
Get a bunch of cats. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm allergic. I'm allergic. I got no choice.
Even then, I don't know. What else do you do if you stay single the rest of your life?
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to reference Al Pacino. I was like, Al Pacino's been single his whole life, and he seems real happy, you know? And then I think about him, like, that dude's probably not super happy.
Right.
You know, he's going from lady to lady. He just had a kid at like 80 or whatever. Like, I don't want to do that, you know? But when I was like 22, 23, I'm like, I could do this. Al Pacino does it.
Yeah,
that guy's the man.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell me about that tattoo that says I was in heaven.
Somebody's going to love this one. It was based on a experience that I had with the significant other that I thought I was going to marry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Just a moment in time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll call it a moment in time. It was a it was a moment in time.
Uh-huh.
It was a very intimate moment in time that we had.
Yeah.
And I got the tattoo knowing the risk.
Yeah. But you're like, I like the sentiment.
But it was such a dope tattoo anyways that I was like, even if we break up, like this is still a sick tattoo.
Yeah.
Funny enough though, this is a tattoo that everybody asks about.
Really?
Yeah.
Everybody
asks about this tattoo. It's one tattoo that I'm like, can we not? Can we not go? And specifically, like, if I'm dating a girl, I'm like, tell me what your tattoos mean. And ask me, I was in heaven. And sometimes I'm like, do you really want to know?
Right.
Like, yeah. And I'm like, fuck. And they're like, I shouldn't ask. I'm like,
you should have got it smaller.
At least I'm honest.
Yeah.
You know?
You should have got it smaller.
I didn't get her name tattooed on me, so that's good. Yeah. But that's
Do you have any tattoos you regret?
No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah. I love this tattoo. Not really. I mean, I got this tattoo with my cousin. He called me one day. Same cousin who introduced me to drugs and alcohol. Same cousin that did my production. Mm-hmm. This is the only one that doesn't really fit my aesthetic.
Yeah.
I love it because it says family and we got it together and it was on a whim. Like it's cool, right? Yeah. Like something we did together.
Right.
But like I don't know. I had to get it done over. Like I got this tattoo from somebody who was living at the sober living that I was managing at the time. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that he had relapsed.
Yeah.
So he was like doing the tattoo, like kind of like nodding out. And I was like, why does it look like crap, dude?
Oh, because he's
I found out after, like, he's been loaded for the last month. And I was like, oh my God, dude. So I had to get it touched up recently to get it all black. Beyond that, like, Loverboy was one that is the only tattoo where I was sitting on the table. Mm-hmm. And I was like, do I really want to do this neck tattoo right now? Like this neck tattoo, the Frederick Forrest hands, I love. Yeah. I think it's so cool. Yeah. It's just beautiful, right? But this one, I was like, I'm going to have a Loverboy on my neck forever. But then it's like, I don't know. Like I'm such a lover boy though. Yeah. You know, like I'm such a hopeless romantic to an extent. Like, and I was like, it fits. Right. You know what I mean? Like it's very fitting. So
no, it's funny. Even though I don't have any tattoos, I love the idea that like, they're just these little chapters of your life. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the reason I love I Was in Heaven so much is because it's beautiful, but it's really cryptic.
It is very cryptic. It's very ambiguous.
Yeah, but
it could mean anything.
But
and especially since I was a drug addict. People are like, did you overdose and almost die? I'm like, no, that'd be kind of cool.
I wasn't literally in heaven.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love, like, it's funny. When you were telling your story, I was thinking, like, with my ex, there was one night specifically where we were just like bowling.
Yeah.
Right. But I swear to you, this was the perfect night.
Euphoric.
That anyone could have scripted for no reason.
Yeah.
You know?
You're like in sync.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, we had kind of reached the zenith of our passion, and I don't know, just everything was, the rhythm was perfect. The notes we were hitting together were perfect. And I was in heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's funny about this tattoo? Drew Holiday from the Celtics. Mm-hmm. You know who Drew Holiday is, right? He purchased this hat. So I was on a flight home from Pompano Beach, New Year's Eve, 2023. We're a month and a half into starting the company, 2 months, whatever. Mm-hmm. He bought this hat. Turns out he's like very Christian, right? Relationship with God. I'm assuming that he purchased it for that reason, right? I'm getting on the flight. I got upgraded. I'm sitting there. I talked to my friend and I'm like, yo, because he's like 3 seats ahead of me. He always gets upgraded because he does. So that's why I said I got upgraded. I'm not flexing, right?
Yeah.
I got upgraded so I could talk to my buddy.
Yeah.
And I go, hey, Drew Holiday? He's like, from the Celtics? I'm like, I think so. He's like, look up his address. So I looked up the address on there and it's in Boston. I'm like, oh boy, no way is this happening.
Yeah.
So I contacted my 3PL. I had a 3PL at the time before I was shipping everything myself. And I'm like, send him whatever extra hats we had. We had one extra art hat, one art hat. And I was like, oh, okay, send it to him. Because we only had like, our first run of hats was like 400 hats total across 6 SKUs.
Right.
So like we didn't have, and I was paying $20 a hat at the time. Like I was losing money on every sale. But I'm like, Drew Holiday, we're going to do it. And my buddy was like, this guy's my best friend and he's guided me so much through the product. Like I would not be where I'm at without this man in my life.
Yeah.
The kid's 24 and you would think he's 40 based on where he's at in his life. One of the smartest people I've ever met. But he's like, think about it. The potential of this could be crazy.
Right.
So I sent him some hats and like 2 weeks later, I'm looking on the Celtics Instagram. Somebody tags me. It's Drew Holiday walking down the tunnel or the causeway or whatever. Somebody on our comments was like, "It's not the tunnel, you idiot."
It's
like,
the
whatever.
Like,
who cares? Dude? I don't care. He's walking. A photo of him walking in the tunnel with our art hat on, and I got so excited. I didn't know how to make an ad out of it or anything, so I just took a screenshot and made a green screen video. And I was like, "This is the coolest thing that's ever happened." Drew Holiday wearing our hat, and like. That has been still to this day is our best performing ad that we've ever ran. Ever in our entire life. All because I was in heaven. Yeah. You know, I don't know. Funny story. But that kind of like put us on the map to an extent. And then Dom Dalla wore the hats and that was crazy. 2 weekends in a row at Coachella, both sets, Friday and Saturday night. Right. Oh my goodness, that was crazy.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that moment was really cool.
That's awesome.
So man. I owe it to my ex.
Yeah. That's
Damn it.
That's some weird synchronicity of life.
It is weird how that stuff works.
Yeah.
You know, you couldn't script that out in a movie.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody could.
Right.
Maybe Martin Scorsese could. But, you know,
Yeah. I get kind of obsessed with the connectedness of things.
100%.
Like I've always thought about this, and I'm a writer, so this kind of goes into what I love to do, but I've always wanted to, like, once I've met the girl and I know we're getting married and everything, I want to like chart out all the things that had to happen that led to us meeting.
Oh, that's interesting.
And not only all the things that happened, but all the people in life that had to have been kind of part of it.
Yeah.
You know, because sometimes you're like, well, dude, I met that girl all on my own, like just because of my swag and my riz.
Yeah.
But it's
I got this, man. This is all me.
But it's like, I wouldn't have ever met her had I not moved here. And I wouldn't have moved here if my parents hadn't made this decision. And if I wouldn't have been friends with this person, I wouldn't have gone out this night, you know, just all these things.
Yeah.
And
it's wild how many of those connections you can make when you're looking for them too.
Right.
It's so easy to overlook those things, right? Yeah. But like, I think about the way that I met my best friend in Atlanta, right? Like my friend who I went to junior high with just so happened to be visiting, and he's like, hey, I'm visiting, come have lunch with me and my cousin. I almost didn't go.
Yeah.
I was almost like, I don't want to go, lunch, whatever.
Yeah.
But I went, and like that person has expanded my life exponentially, or you think about like all of the things that had to happen for this company to start in this way, like spending the weekend on the boat with that person, going to this event, meeting these people, the fact that my cousin just so happened to get this job and moved from San Diego to Orange, and then he could do the manufacturing, and just the things, when you look for them, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's so easy to overlook them.
Yeah.
And I notice that when I get super busy and when like things are clicking and I'm going, it's really easy for me to like forget that. And I feel like I have to put systems in place to remind me on a daily basis to be like, okay, let's sit down and like, let's really look at this thing. How is God? And ultimately what it comes down to, right, is how has God been interacting in my life? That's all it always is.
Do you journal quite a bit?
I do. I journal every night. I created this system called the 5x5. I did it largely right before my girlfriend and I broke up, that big one I was telling you about, because I couldn't go to sleep because I had some knowledge that I didn't want to have, that I didn't communicate to her, that was like really stifling me. So I do 5 minutes of stretching, 5 minutes of journaling, and then 5 minutes of, or 5 pages of reading every night. And that's just like a baseline.
Yeah.
It's, sometimes 10, 15 minutes of each, 10, 15 pages or whatever. But I started doing that and I realized, oh, I should have been doing this a long time ago. But I don't handwrite it. I do it on my computer.
Yeah.
Because when I handwrite, my hand cramps up and I can't, I'm 3 sentences deeper than what I'm currently writing. So if I can type it, I can just get it all out. So I journal every night.
That's cool. I do this thing where it's kind of like a gratitude journal, but it's like every day I write down just good things that happened.
I do that too.
Right?
Yeah. That's my therapist told me to do that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like,
how many? Or is it just whatever
it's
comes
just
up?
Like on good days, I write as many as I can.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But the whole point is, on the horrible days where it feels like nothing good has happened, I have to stretch my mind. Right? And I have to be like, okay, today was an actual disaster, but
there's always good in it.
I got this sweet text from so-and-so.
Yeah.
Right? Or actually everything was garbage today. My lunch sucked.
But I'm alive.
I'm
healthy.
And also gorgeous sunset.
So let me ask you this. How long ago did you start doing that? What was the impetus to start doing that? I'm assuming it was probably despair of some sort. Pain. And then how have you noticed the implementation of that system in your life has affected your daily life?
Yeah.
If it has at all.
Yeah. So I started journaling maniacally as a kid.
Maniacally.
Yeah.
That's dark.
Right. But it was more when I was a kid. For some reason, early on, I was obsessed with documenting things.
Okay.
Making lists, writing down, like, played with so-and-so at recess, blah, 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 blah. Did this, did this, did this, did this. Yeah.
Just for no reason?
No reason.
Interesting.
I think both my parents are artists. I think I loved the idea of just having a body of work, right? But I didn't.
Your magnum opus at 8?
But at 8, it's
Do you
funny.
still have all those pages?
I do.
Really? Oh my goodness, you have to make a book of them. You have to. Even if it's just for you and a huge coffee table book. Right. It's like this tall. Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. That is so cool.
And the funny thing is my first few journals, unreadable. Like, not just the material, but like
legibly.
There's no spacing. It just looks like a bunch of letters.
Yeah.
But I was just obsessed with creating, I think.
Yeah.
But I didn't understand it really in an artistic way yet, or a creative way. I was just like, why wouldn't I write about what happened at school? Like, I want to remember it.
Yeah.
But so I've always been a big journaler, and then as I got older, I got more interested in the creative and artistic side of writing, and realizing that writing was really just taking my thoughts and organizing them, because it's a mess up here.
Yeah.
Right. And so my journaling became really more me discovering what I actually feel and think.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times I think I know what I think.
Yeah.
But I don't really have a clue.
Well, you're sitting there and you're like, yeah, I know what's going on.
Yeah.
But how many times have you started journaling something? Or when you're stuck on a thought and you're kind of confused about it, you're stuck in like, I don't know how to process this. And you just start writing. Yeah. It all flows out. And you're like, oh my, and then you're crying at the end. You're like, why do I feel this way? 30 minutes ago, I felt fine.
Yeah. It's crazy. I like the first book I wrote, it's like a memoir about all the relationships I had been in up until that point. Right. And when I was writing it, I realized like,
you need a lover boy tattoo. You're the lover boy here.
I might get a temporary one.
Okay. Right.
But give me a Loverboy hat. That's what I need.
Do you not have one?
But I don't.
Oh, I'll get one too. We have restocks coming in January. Okay. Restock coming in January.
But yeah, the whole reason I want to do this podcast is to show you I'm a lover boy and I deserve a hat. But
last episode, let's wrap it up.
But what the crap was I saying?
Journaling, talking about the book that you wrote was a memoir.
Oh yeah. I realized that I would start writing memories that I didn't realize I had remembered.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Like it's almost like the writing unlocked these caverns in my brain.
I could see that.
You know?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've gone through maybe similar stuff with therapy where you're like, wow, I didn't realize that. Yeah. I remembered that. Yeah. You know? But so yeah, writing has become something that is imperative in my life. Yeah. But yeah, these I think.
And in doing the gratitude aspect of it though, having that, because I'm a big guy with systems, right? I love having systems in my life, like the 5x5 or my exercise system or my vitamin or business or whatever it is. Having that system in your life, how would you say that has impacted your life on a daily basis since you implemented sort of the gratitude one, for example? Yeah,
I would say it's really just opened my eyes to how beautiful life is. Yeah. Like, I've always been a generally, for the most part, optimistic person, but like, because I'm obsessed with my lists and my writing, I'm thinking throughout the entire day, what are things I can add?
That's interesting.
Tonight.
That's in,
you know?
Yeah. You're doing your homework now.
So I'm almost manufacturing good moments.
Which, are you really manufacturing them? If they're making you feel good? Right. Happening?
Right. Yeah. But I mean, and what a great thing to manufacture.
Absolutely.
Right?
Because how easy is it to manufacture bad moments? Yeah. Or to just think, this sucks.
But I try to be like, oh, here's another thing I do with the gratitude journal is the next day I go through and I highlight the favorite moments.
Oh, really?
So not a set number, but maybe 2 or 3, just the ones that really stand out. Yeah. And I take a day to like let it settle, and then I'll be like, that meant the most to me. That meant the most to me.
Oh, that's cool. And I might start doing that.
Then I can go back and be like, what is the pattern of things that tend to always be the most important to me? Yeah. Or what tend to actually be my favorite parts of the day? Because sometimes I think, like, even like I'm on a vacation and I think like, well, dude, the best part was like we went and saw the Leaning Tower of Pisa. That was dope. Yeah. And then we like went to the beach. That was dope. And then we had this expensive, lavish dinner. Those are my highlights, right? Yeah. But then when I really break it down, I'm like, actually, my favorite part was talking to Nick about why him and his brother are so close.
That's interesting.
You know?
Yeah.
And yes, this was cool and it was novel and I got dope pics and the gram's on fire. But
people are going to think my life is awesome.
But the reality is my favorite part was talking to this little conversation.
So have you found that in highlighting those things that the consistent pattern is human interactions, one-on-one interactions?
100%.
That's fascinating. Yeah. And what beautiful insight to have as a human being, because now that's going to shape the way you go through your life on a daily basis. Right. And then when you're in those moments, you might not be so worried about the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Yeah. And you might be like, let's skip it and let's get a coffee at this coffee shop and talk about what you're going through. Or just, and you're going to be able to expand on those, right?
Or just realize like, these sites, these touristy things or these events, they're awesome and they're memories, but it's who you're with.
150,000%.
You know?
Entirely, dude.
Yeah. And that's such a high percentage. But like it's been really cool because it helps me be really present too, because it helps me be like, oh, this conversation I'm having with Johnny is one of my favorite parts of the day, so I want to make sure and be here.
Be present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm obsessed with it and can't really live any other way.
That's cool. I love hearing about people's sort of systems.
Yeah.
You know, it geeks me out because it makes me think about like, how can I enhance my life?
Yeah.
I just think about the things that I've implemented and how it's consistency and discipline and systems have like, you get into these spots of like being sad or being depressed or whatever. And then it's like, oh, well, if I do these systems, like I'm setting myself up for success every day.
Yeah.
Like to the best possible extent. Like every morning I read from 3 different books. I read Adult Children of Alcoholics daily meditation book. I read a codependency daily meditation by Melody Beattie, which, oh my God, if there's ever been a book that's hit me right in between the eyes so many times, I started reading, I'm like, I might have some serious codependency issues. Like this is standing out way too much to me. And then I just started reading Robert Greene's The Daily Laws, which, you know, he's an interesting guy. The book's okay.
Sure.
But doing that on a daily basis, like allows me to set myself up for success in the morning. And like, having that system, like I don't know what my life would be like if I didn't do that, right? So like the gratitude thing, I have some things that I'm thinking of right now. I'm like, oh, I need to adjust this, or maybe I'll take the number 5 off of it because my therapist is like, write 5 things, and I'm always at 4, and sometimes I have 7, right? But I'm at 4, and I'm like, oh, what else? Which is like good to extend myself and try to, okay, what else was good about today? But I like the idea of just kind of free flowing it, you know?
And it's funny, I've noticed sometimes, this isn't always the case, but sometimes like, you know, I'll have my journal open and it'll be like Monday, I have like 20 items, right? And then Tuesday I have like 3 or 4, but I realized Monday I was kind of struggling. So I was looking for like, these are going to be small, but I need to find moments of joy. I need to find some silver lining. And Tuesday was great. So it was just kind of easy. Like, we did this, and the day was great.
That's fascinating. The days where it's not so hot, you find a lot more good things. That's so interesting. Yeah.
But you know, it's not always that pattern, but
of course.
Yeah. Well, dude, I want to wrap up, but I want to ask, what for you? I've loved sort of the theme of this podcast. I thought it was funny that your friend asked you to like think about what, you know, maybe the theme should be.
Yeah.
But I think the themes kind of just work themselves out.
Yeah, that's kind of why I didn't even go there. It's like we're just gonna go for it.
But I've loved the theme of just kind of hope and resilience, and I just want to hear one last thing of like where you go to immediately and what thoughts do you have when you realize you're feeling really hopeless or you're feeling really alone or really lonely. How do you combat that, and how do you start to get out of that, especially because you've been there many times and climbed out many times? So when you feel yourself entering that space, do you have a good go-to like thought?
I wish that I could sit here and be like, I've got a system for that.
Yeah.
I've talked about systems, right? I think over the years, I've gotten a lot better at it, specifically over the last like 3 to 4 years. And I think that's come with age and maturity. I'm not the best at it. You know, sometimes I can get in my head, and you know, the last week and a half leading up to this, like we've had a lot of stresses with the company, a lot of stuff we got to pay for, a lot of stuff that went really well, and then a lot of stuff that didn't go super well. And I've allowed myself to kind of go down this road, right? But it's, the highs aren't so high, the lows aren't so low, so it hasn't been that bad. But I think the thing that tends to help me the most, if I can't find that thought, if I can't sort of quell that anxiety, move my body. Physical exercise has been one of the biggest helps in regards to like dealing with that. And then it allows me to, because I have that obsessiveness, so I'm obsessively thinking about whatever's happening while I'm exercising, but my brain is working in a different way when I'm pushing my body to its limits, right? I'll go on really long bike rides, and sometimes I'll go on really long bike rides and listen to a really sad album. There's this album that I listened to probably 100 times front to back this last year called Hypochondriac by Break-Ins.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best albums I think that's ever been created.
Yeah.
People probably debate me, but whatever. But like that has helped me sort of go through like whatever grieving process I need to go through in that moment. And then I can come back and then sit and think about it. And then I'll usually have a thought and I'll go to journal. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'll just need to journal at the first thing in the morning or middle of the day because I'll have this thought and then I'll work through it and be like, this makes sense. And I need to be a bit more gentle with myself.
Yeah.
I also find that when I'm stuck in those moments, getting to go out and spend time with my friends without trying to work through the problem tends to help me a lot because it allows me to separate myself from the situation and be like, my life's pretty good.
Yeah.
Like I don't really have any problems.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'll just hit my knees and pray.
Yeah.
You know, I'll be in such a bad spot sometimes that I just like, I hit my knees and I'll almost cry, won't cry, but I'll just be so frustrated. I'm like, God, like whatever you want me to do, wherever I need to go, show me something because I'm lost right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, whether there's God up there listening to me or whether it's just a sense of like self-release, whatever that process is, I'm not here to scientifically figure that out, but it helps me so much because it's the sense of like, I'm putting my hands up saying, I don't know what the answer is. I need help and I'm willing to go in whatever direction that I need to go. And 10 times out of 10, something pops up.
Yeah.
God shows up.
Yeah.
And I find peace, you know?
Yeah.
But it's oftentimes through like physical, tangible things that I can do, like praying, seeing my friends, journaling, going and physically moving my body. And sometimes when I go physically move my body, like I will beat myself into the ground.
Yeah.
I think that's why I've gotten such good shape over
Right.
It's like sometimes that's the only way I know how to work through these things, you know?
Yeah.
But those things seem to help me out the most.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love just the simple phrase of like saying and admitting that you need to be more gentle with yourself.
Something I've been working on a lot.
Yeah.
Very hard on myself. And again, that double-edged sword that we talked about, right? It's very beneficial. It's allowed us to accomplish all the things that we wanted to accomplish with the company, or allowed me to accomplish all the things I wanted to accomplish with the company this year. But also like I can beat myself into a state of submission sometimes.
So how do you find a balance of being really driven and disciplined and ambitious, but gentle with yourself?
I have to force myself sometimes.
Yeah.
I have to force myself to like, I have a lot of, I don't know if I'd say performance anxiety, but like I have a lot of anxiety around like if I'm not performing well, then I start to get anxious. Or if I think I'm not performing well, but on the outside everything looks good.
Yeah.
Like I should be doing more right now. And sometimes I will voluntarily do it where like, I'm just going to take a day, go take care of myself, clean up the house, go spend some time with my friends and leave my responsibilities to be and come back to them later and allow myself to reset.
Yeah.
And sometimes I will just get so overwhelmed with all of the things that it's just like I involuntarily have to step away because I'm like, I can't even deal with this right now because I'm so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But oftentimes I've found that as long as I have that consistent discipline of making sure that I'm attempting to have a conscious contact with God that day and journaling is often my way of like communicating with God as well, that those things seem to help. But finding a perfect balance is like, it's an art, right? Because some days I'm really good at it. A lot of times I'm not.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I'll probably be trying to figure it out for the rest of my life. I'm sure I'll get better at it.
Right.
I've gotten better at it, but it's a process.
Yeah.
You know?
I keep saying one last question, but why are you obsessed with just the word art? I love that you are.
I don't even know that. It's
or maybe you're not even obsessed. You just liked it, and
it's this. I've been trying to pinpoint it, right? I'll be entirely honest. When the art hat released, it wasn't my favorite hat. I thought it was great. I thought it was cool. And then everybody else started loving it, and I was like, it's cool. It's not my favorite hat, you know?
It's a more simple design.
It's a more simple design. It is very ambiguous though. And I think that's kind of the theme of our designs is like, there's these ambiguous designs besides like the Unbreakable resilience, besides our like company branded hats. But I grew up with skateboarding culture. And one thing the company that I worked for as a graphic designer, I interned for as a graphic designer, where I kind of cut my teeth in the fashion world, a lot of things that they did was like flip company logos, right? Like they would flip like a Michelob Ultra logo or whatever logo. That's a big thing in streetwear culture.
Yeah.
And something that I loved that Virgil Abloh did was like, he would always talk about like bootlegs are cool. And I've always kind of loved bootleg culture, you know, like things that you wish Louis Vuitton made, but they never made. So like some dude in New York on the streets was like, I'm going to make shoes with Louis Vuitton, fake Louis Vuitton on it. Like, that's sick. Like, why didn't they make that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then they did the Nike with Virgil Abloh. And I was like, that's like a bootleg that turned into a real thing. Yeah. So it's kind of this idea of this like bootleg flip sort of like ironic kind of streetwear culture that's just like, you know, this cigarette company's, I can't say, I got a cease and desist from this company, by the way. Okay. So if you look at the t-shirt, it's got a curve on the top of it.
Yeah.
The logo on the back, you'll look at it. The hat is straight.
Oh, okay.
We got a cease and desist like 2 months ago. So we're working through that. Talking to my lawyer, we're good.
Yeah.
But I just kind of love the idea of this like ironic kind of like, you know, cigarettes and art,
right?
Like it's these two things that are just so like romantic Parisian, and it's just I don't know, it just speaks to my soul in a way that I'm just like, that's dope. It's just cool. You know what I mean? So
I mean, that was, I think, you know, when you messaged me, like that was probably the first thing I saw. And I was just like,
you and everybody else,
right. But I'm just like, I love art. This looks cool.
And it's like a form of art, like art with the cigarette logo. It's like, that's sick. I don't know, it's cool, it's ironic, it's funny, it's like,
no, I love the ambiguity of it. Okay, finally, I love to like end with just flipping the roles and let you ask me one question.
Ask you one question.
Yeah.
Let me think here. What would you say was the most transformative moment of your life where you feel like you switched from a boy to a man? And the reason I ask that is that breakup that I was talking to you about was the moment where I feel like I flipped from a boy to a man. I realized I need to have purpose in my life. I need to build my relationship with God. I need to be able to have my direction so that I can lead a family one day, right? And so that my life can be lived with purpose. And I thought I'd had those moments previously, but I did not have those moments until that moment. And I was like, oh, this is what life's supposed to be like.
Right.
I'm still growing through that. So I love hearing about other men, and like, I look at you, I have an immense amount of respect for you, for what you're doing. You know, your journey, the things you talk about. I love the way you're able to be vulnerable and speak openly to thousands and thousands of people, which is like scary. You know what I mean? But I think you live your life with purpose, and I think you clearly live your life as a man. So like, what was that moment for you to take you from boyhood to like truly manhood?
That's such a good question.
Hey, you asked for it, man.
I know, I did.
I'm laying it on you.
It's funny. I don't think there's like one that I'm like, for sure that's it. Right. But I think there's lots of moments I've had where I haven't really been the same since. And I had this experience. So I served a 2-year mission for my church. And I lived in Brazil for 2 years. Had to learn Portuguese. You know, I'm just out there with another dude preaching the good word, right? And it was wild and it was awesome and I loved it.
Can you still speak Portuguese?
Yeah.
I used to work at a pizza place with a bunch of Brazilian people, so I learned all the cuss words and stuff.
The important words. But yeah, I and it's been a huge part of my life. And I went when I was 19 till I was 21. But the way it's set up, you're with your companion for like 6 weeks at a time, and then sometimes you get transferred or you get a different companion. But it's just me and this dude in a house for like 3 months together, right? And he was a Brazilian. And for a few reasons I won't get into, but very trivial reasons, he didn't talk to me for 3 days. And we're like all day, every day, we're just like hitting the pavement in people's houses, teaching them. And he wouldn't say a word.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was at my wit's end.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not a very confrontational person. I'm very slow to anger, but I was just like, dude, I'm going to freak out on you.
Yeah.
I'm losing my mind. And so one night, it was, the third night, and I'm just on my knees, but I'm angry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I can't even really get out any words. I'm just on my knees, hoping that this anger will subside and I can get something from God here. But I just stayed there for like 20 minutes, just kind of like on edge. And then finally I started to feel some peace, but no answers or anything. I just started to feel some peace. And then my dude tapped me on the shoulder, had tears in his eyes, and just gave me a hug and said he was sorry. And I was just like, okay. And I think from that point on, I realized like I didn't need an explanation from him. I didn't need to like vent and be like, dude, what's your problem? Like, why, I was just like, oh, he came to me in ash and sackcloth, and I need to be the bigger man and just accept it and forgive him immediately.
Yeah.
With no questions asked. And the funny thing is, when I got transferred a few weeks later, he bawled like a baby.
Really?
Yeah. And it just taught me, I think it kind of helped me grow up a little bit in that moment, realizing like there's so many petty things that go on in our lives, and it's so easy to just be obsessed with being right and being like, I'm the victim in this scenario.
Yeah.
I was the person wronged.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a huge deal, you're like, this is the moron. I'm the hero.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I realized in that moment, whether that's true or not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, I value this relationship, even though it's really strained. Like, he, for whatever reason, has found it in his heart to apologize. I need to accept that.
Yeah.
And just respond with love.
Yeah.
And that's the only appropriate answer.
And how many times have you been him too?
Right.
And hoping that other person would just be like, it's all right.
Yeah.
Let's keep it going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of that idea of just offering people grace when maybe they don't even deserve it.
Yeah.
But am I the arbiter of what people deserve?
No.
No.
We'd like to think we are sometimes.
I sure think I am sometimes.
Feels pretty righteous.
Yeah.
Feel pretty good on that high horse sometimes.
Right. But so I think that was a moment that I became maybe more loving as a human.
Forgiving, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And you feel like that's informed most of your relationships moving forward?
I think so. It's something that I think about a lot.
Have you found it easy to implement that in intimate relationships?
Yes, when they are, and to be fair, I've been really lucky as far as like, I've gotten my heart broken more than I appreciate, but while it's good, while I'm in the relationship, I've had amazing girls. Like, I haven't been mistreated. I haven't been cheated on. I haven't had toxic relationships. So I'm happy to peacefully, lovingly resolve conflict. Yeah. Like, I'm not really that interested in being right.
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish I could say the same thing. I'm good at it sometimes. Not so good at it sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the situation, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, I've tried to, at least the bad parts of it, I've tried to kind of put my ego to bed and say like, I've got a healthy confidence and self-esteem, but I don't need my ego to be inflated or stroked. Like, I care about the relationship, but, anytime I find myself being like prideful, I'm like, oh, that's why I'm unhappy.
That makes sense.
It's not necessarily the other person.
Yeah.
It's because I just,
my pride and my ego is hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And my ego is a tender little guy.
Yeah. That's interesting. I have a strong feeling that people were probably expecting a different response.
Yeah.
But it's so fascinating to consider, like, conceptually what people think, like, growing from a boy to a man is, right? Like, oh, I don't know, I went to war, whatever, right? But it's like, no, I learned how to soften my heart.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people would put being a man and softening your heart in the same category.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty beautiful.
Yeah. It was so cool because this kid was, we were both kids at the time, but this kid was very rough around the edges and hard to love.
Yeah.
And, told me at another point before his silent treatment that he wanted to punch me in the face,
What a gem.
He is a sweet kid. But yeah, it informed me that like I can love people that are hard to love.
Yeah. And that also allows you to be gentle with yourself when you are being hard to love.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. Which is part of being, we talk about like learning to be gentle with yourself, right? Like it's so easy to point the finger at other people when they're not behaving correctly.
Yeah.
And then it's so corny to say, but you have one finger pointing at somebody else, you have three pointing back at you. And it's like, fuck, you're so right.
Right.
Because oftentimes when somebody's doing something that I want them to do, it's because I'm afraid that I'm going to do it myself.
Right.
Yeah,
you're just.
So if you can soften your heart, love somebody when they're hard to love, it makes it a lot easier for you to be gentle with yourself when you're being hard to love.
That's true.
It's powerful shit.
Yeah.
Powerful stuff. Saved it.
You're good, bro. You're good. You're a little rough around the edges. No
Take it easy.
I'm just playing. No, I appreciate you, bro.
Of course.
Yeah, this has been an awesome conversation.
Can I add a little plug in here?
Please. I was going to just ask.
We have our new collection dropping. It is called High Standards. It is dropping January 2025. It is probably one of my favorite collections to date. This hat's going to be in there. We have it in navy. We have a restock of the Loverboy hat. We're dropping the hat that you are wearing on Monday, same day this podcast comes out, 11 a.m. EST.
Yeah.
But High Standards, January 2025.
Awesome. And these are shirts that do you still have these?
We still have some of those in stock. Yeah. The AUG 11 art shirt. Grab those on the website right now. I would definitely recommend grabbing them while you can, because we will probably not rerun that exact shirt when it sells out.
Awesome. And you are primarily hats, but you have some shirts and stuff, and you've said you want to eventually move into just all sorts of fashion, and
it'll eventually be a full cut and sew line. So what we're doing,
what does that mean?
Cut and sew custom garments.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have a vision for kind of perfecting the hat aspect of it. This is what has worked really well for us. We're building our systems and our foundation. We're putting the right people in place, making sure that the back end of the business that everybody doesn't see is running smoothly and efficiently. And we're maximizing that. And then we will move into apparel, and then eventually we'll move into athletic apparel, because that is such an easy integration into my life, and to be able to tell my story and to be able to add content around that. And it's stuff that I want to make that doesn't exist in the world. But the overall grander vision for the company is eventually building it out into a full line. I mean, awesome. I've had the amount of ideas that I have. I just can't move fast enough to get them out into the world. Right. Like, it's kind of frustrating. It's like, I just want to get these things out into the world, but like there's a system and there's a process, and like I have to respect that process. So, but we will hopefully this time next year have some more stuff, and then in a couple years, by episode 811, we'll have
That's
be in thousands of retailers, and
awesome, dude. Do you have any more tattoos that are going to become hats?
It's an interesting question. So we have Thou Art Mortal. It's a hat. Darlin'. It's a hat. Dad, that's a hat. Art. I might make a professor hat. My dog.
Yeah.
No. I don't know. Probably not. I think I've already kind of moved away from like making all of my tattoos into hats, and now we've designed outside of the tattoos. That was a really good impetus, a good starting point. I didn't want to market it as like, hey, this is merch of my tattoos, because I didn't want it to be so tied to that. It's cool to tie it into the story sometimes. I'm sure I'll get some more tattoos, turn it into a hat. I don't know, but it's not really kind of the guiding force behind our designs now at this point.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, Johnny, thanks so much, my guy.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Of course, man.